Can everyone hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Is it working?
I don't know, speak more into the, hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
I gotta hold this. All right, welcome guys. We're doing the landing in job / internship in AI. I know we initially advertised it as landing a job, but we realized, you guys are college students, so you're probably going for internship first and foremost. So that's why we just kind of changed the title last minute. But thank you guys for coming out. And we're just gonna go and jump right into it. Just explain what the panel format is. And this chair is a little weird. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, we have 4 lovely panelists with us today, and we're just gonna have them introduce themselves, one by one, just who they are, what they do, and whatnot. We're gonna go ahead and dive into our panel discussion. It's gonna be formatted as more of a forum and a Q&A style than an actual panel, like you guys have probably seen on YouTube and whatnot. So we're gonna talk about, the recruiting process as well as the AI element to it. We realize, since we're all college students, we need also the generic aspect of how recruiting is going to work, right? Most of us are new to it, some of us are more experienced and whatnot, and so having that element, supplementing it, will empower you guys with the right tools. And then finally, if you guys have any questions that I didn't, cover or didn't, answer, feel free to ask for that. And then obviously, thank yous to our panelists that coming for today, and just like that. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start off with our first panelist on my left, Amol. Turn on the mic.
Sure.
You can go and introduce yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So my name is Amol. I actually was part of the AAS about 2 years ago, back in 2019. I was VP, and I graduated from UTV. I'm a data scientist / machine learning engineer at JP Morgan, and I'm excited for this event.
Hello. Okay. Hey guys, my name is Noreen. I am currently a senior graduating in the fall with my Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science, and currently I intern / co-op at Dialecta, and I will be returning full-time in January. I also was part of AIS since my freshman year, and then I was president in 2019. So it's really good to be back and see everyone here. Thank you for continuing to support the club and what we do. And I'll pass it off to Albert.
By the way, let's applaud for our panelists one by one.
It's good to be back here. I've been to a few of these events. Noreen invited me a couple of years ago, and it was an interesting discussion. I've done a lot of different things because I get bored very quickly. So I've done startups, I work for large companies. So most recently, as I was talking to Noreen, just this year, when this year started, I was working on machine learning products for CoreLogic, a real estate technology company. And then they decided to just go private. So I switched to a quantum computing startup that wanted to build an AI machine learning based platform. But after working there for a few months, I realized it's going to take a long time before I see my product being used by anyone. And so then I jumped to IBM, where I'm helping them make their customers successful with AI. So now I'm really, really close to the action. So it's a bit more interesting. Be happy to answer any questions. So by the way, just to be clear, I'm not representing IBM here. So I'll be happy to talk about all of my previous interviewing experiences and some of the candid advice that you may need. Thank you.
Hey guys, firstly, it's good to be outside home, and I'm just coming by from the party. Just made me realize how old I am. I can't catch up with you guys. I mean, it's the same thing, right? Even in ML, you just can't catch up with this change on a daily basis. About me, myself as Sudhir, I've been in this industry for close to 2 decades now. Tried out a lot of things. In my recent I'm heading the enterprise element in Mr. Cooper. You know Mr. Cooper. And outside of my professional friend, one of my most passionate area is to help a lot of youngsters and startups take their idea to market. I do quite a lot of work on the high friend intellectual property, and also help groommakers, get evaluation for their ideas and their products. Today I'll do my best. I know you guys are ahead of me. I'll do my best to answer questions. And again, I'm not here to represent any company, so very candid, very candid advice and to provide to all of you. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys so much for the input. Thank you guys for the introductions. I think that was really insightful for all of us, kind of getting diverse backgrounds from everyone here. So before I kind of get started, I'll kind of explain how the panel is going to work. So I'm going to hit each section in terms of the recruiting process, on how to, all the way from like job searching to like what new hire is going to look like, and then also talk about and comment on the AI industry for trends, skills you guys need to learn and whatnot. So I'll ask a question, and then one of the panelists, I'll kind of direct the question at them, and if any other comments wants to comment for that question, you're more than welcome to. And since they have one mic, so if a panelist wants to comment on a question that they're not directed towards, just go ahead and raise your hand. We'll just pass the mic between each other. But other than that, we'll go ahead and get into our first question, which is, let's go the next one. We're gonna hit the job and internship searching. And I'm going to start it off with Amol. You're going to be your Mythbuster for today. So I think, one of the things is, I guess the notions is, when you think about internship or job search, people think, junior is the perfect year. I think I'm going to nail every single job interview or internship interview I get there. I think, it's a really great year. But is that really the case? What do you think is technically the most good time to start the job and internship process?
So what I'll say is there's a few technicalities in this. I'd say freshman year. And the reason I say freshman year, I'm not necessarily saying getting internships in freshman year, right? Because a lot of companies, they don't want to hire freshmen for internships, right? Because they're looking for someone they can scoop right out of college, right? But freshman year, if you don't get an internship, like most people, I think that's when you should be building up your resume, right? So you have a lot of free time in freshman year, especially your first semester. That's the time to get involved in clubs like AIS, start working on AI projects, start learning, building up your resume, doing side projects, right? If you don't get an internship, you can still do hackathons, you can still do side projects and build up your resume, right? And then I think sophomore year is when you can really start applying for internships. That's when companies start to consider you. So freshman year is when you build your resume, and then sophomore, junior year is when you start really getting internships.
I really love the way how you talked about, experience building, right? That's the really most important part. You may not land that first internship, that first interview you do, but it'll really give you a chance to, really nail the next one you go for. So when you're looking at job postings per se, online or whatever, is there a set of criteria you should always have, or should you always look something more specific when you're looking for jobs? I want to go ahead and pass up to Noreen for that one.
I just want to comment on the last thing. Amal is completely right. Start as early as possible. And the thing is, one thing people don't understand is that there are no excuses to start as early as possible, right? Whether that's from building up your resume, exploring what you like really take advantage of it. How many of you are freshmen or sophomore year? Is anyone? Yes. Okay, guys, please, pay attention in your classes, do things that you're passionate about, and then focus on, getting an internship and things like that. I feel like sometimes we place a lot of emphasis on that in the beginning of, whatever, freshman year, sophomore year, and everyone has a little bit of anxiety of, I don't have a, internship yet. Am I behind? Am I behind? You're not behind. Take the time to build your resume, understand where your skill set is at, and then continue to build upon that for when you're ready, maybe sophomore or junior year. And then in regards to, what was the question?
I'll go and repeat it. So when you're looking at job posting, is there a set of criteria you should have when you're looking for a job you're interested in, or anything specific on that job posting that you should be searching for?
Yeah, for me, it's a big red flag when the company has a really bad blurb about what they do or what the position is about. If they don't give you enough details, maybe skip it and look for somewhere that will tell you what you'll be doing in the position, what are the skills required, because that means that the employer cares enough to be clear with you upfront, right? So you're not walking into a situation where the expectation bar is here, but you can only perform here and you have no idea, right? So I always look at that, and also don't freak out about the insane listings, like especially in AI and ML. For data science, for example, if you go and look at the posting on the site, it'll have like all these skills that you might not be familiar with. But if you're really strong in Python, for example, or R, any of those programming languages related to data science or machine learning, and maybe you have some experience with AWS or something like that, focus on really showcasing that, even if it only matches 2 or 3 of the skills listed. A lot of the times, these companies don't always know what they're looking for, so they'll just throw as many skills or like, trendy buzzwords that they can, and then, people get scared off by that. So just, be confident in the skills you have, be ready to back it up, and just make sure that you're looking for companies that put the time to actually tell you what you should expect, so.
Anyone else want to comment on that? Any other comments?
Yes, almost right on.
I think that's a very good point about the JD. So, quite a few of you will be applying for your internships, right? Be very clear and ask the employer what is the work you're going to do. Don't end up, being a assistant to someone over there, helping out on the operations trend, when your real need out there is to learn an ML technique, right? So if you have done a lot of research, let's say in image classification, you have done some work on the NLP side of things, you have done some work on the deep learning, right? And the JD is not very clear on what is that you will be going to do. Ask them for, ask them to, ask them, tell them that, hey, I see this as an ML developer internship, but what actually I'm going to do here? Be very clear, because not many employers out there are very clear on what work they'll be giving it out to.
Thank you for this, Adir. So before I go on to the next section, I'd like to just kind of throw out a really, really big question that most of us probably experience. So at one point or another, has any of you experienced imposter syndrome? Okay, does anyone know does anyone not know what imposter syndrome is? All right, everyone's a pretty good idea. Okay, so I guess there's not really like backstory to this, but like, what's a really good way or tip that you guys, have experienced imposter syndrome? What has helped you combat that, going forward?
I feel like the mic was given to me for a reason on this one. No, I wish I could be more articulate about this, but I was literally in the position you guys were like a year and a half ago. I got this internship right through actually Bobber's, one of his Dallas AI. If you guys don't know about Dallas AI, you guys need to talk to Bobber, ask about these like networking events, these meetup sessions. But I actually ended up meeting someone who worked at the company I worked at, and they're just now starting a data practice. And he's like, hey, you might be a good intern. And I was like, I don't know anything about data science. He's like, that's okay. And so they interviewed me and all that jazz, and I went through it, and I got the position. Then I got, canceled because of COVID, which really sucked. And then I reached out again, and I was like, hey, can I have this job? And he was like, yeah, come back. So now I'm back, but I want to say, like, for imposter syndrome, everyone's going to experience it. For those of you that didn't raise your hand and you actually don't know what imposter syndrome is, it's just when you feel like you're out of place or someone's going to discover that all of a sudden you don't know anything about what you're supposed to do, especially in tech, right? Trends are changing, knowledge is changing. You're going to meet people that are always going to be smarter than you, better than you at what you do because they've been doing it for longer. Maybe they have a natural knack for it. So being in that position where I was a student and I really didn't know anything, coming in, you have to be upfront about what you know. If you know 2 things really well, own it. Do not let anyone come and be like, oh, well, I don't think you know. No, like own it. Whatever you do know, be confident in it. And whatever you need to learn, be willing to ask questions. The only way you're going to get over it is if you ask questions and you're honest about what you do and do not know. People will respect you a lot more in a professional world, professional setting, if you're able to be like, hey, this is a task that I don't know how to do, how can I get started? And having that self-starter mindset really helps you get over imposter syndrome, because now I'm like, hey, I might not know what to do with this, but I know where to start looking for resources, who to ask. And so the more that you're open about this and honest, it's funny, like, you're gonna be discovered for things you don't know. If you're upfront about it, not like that you're dumb or anything, but you're just honest, you get over it eventually. And it never goes away fully, but I can attest, like, for those of you that might be in the crowd that are like, I have major imposter syndrome, been there, done that, still doing it, so don't worry, you'll get there. So, anyone else? Imposter syndrome?
Yeah, if you just look at LinkedIn, I see so many imposters. So, I know some of these people and their profiles on LinkedIn are not there. So never worry about it.
So honestly, I had imposter syndrome very early on. This was like senior year of high school actually, right? I was getting into computer science, yeah, like before college, right? And I knew like a little bit of Java programming, right? Hello World programs from AP computer science, right? That was the only language I knew. A little bit of C++, right? And I had friends, right? I was in Seattle, right? I moved there in the middle of high school, right? And these kids are like building web apps and mobile apps, and they're like interning for Microsoft in high school, which is insane. So, the way I got around that was just learning. I decided, I want to specialize in something in CS. And even when I joined AIS, right, I had very little background in AI, but I found people to look up to and I learned from them. That's the key, right? There's always, you might learn so much about AI. You might, go into research. You might get a data science solution. There's always going to be someone who knows more than you, right? So instead of feeling like an imposter, like you're going to be discovered as like a weak link, use that as an opportunity for growth, right? You can use that as a, stepping stone to learn something, right? And, you won't face imposter syndrome, later in your career, I'd say, once you really, you might.
We got past that.
Yeah, I guess it never really goes away. You only learn to really cope with it. The way to cope with it is challenging yourself, pushing your boundaries. So I think they have some.
Yeah, we pass it back. You guys have anything to add on?
I think they got it.
I like that statement, Panelists. So I'll give you two examples. The first example is when I actually started my career. And you guys might not believe it. I didn't know how to type. I didn't know what is a computer, right? Okay, we didn't have computers at home, so I didn't know how to type. And I was recruited for a software developer role. And I'm not sure how many of you guys remember, there's a language called ProC. So it's something with C with embedded C code. And I was discovered. It's good to be discovered because it puts you on the spot. And when you're on the spot, it brings out the best in you. Right. Now, a recent experience, just 2-3 months back. We created a product and it's going to win the Google Innovation Award for in Google Next this time, and I didn't tell you guys, it's not a competition. But soon, various reasons, though I was the main architect of the product, I had to move on to the product and be in an area which is completely unfamiliar to me. Again, I was discovered. And at my age, being discovered is not easy because it hits your ego. And sometimes it brings out the student in you because you can go back to your basics and you can ensure that you polish up your basics much better than what you were a couple of months back. So for all of you here, don't be scared to be discovered. We call it to be discovered. And when you're on the spot, believe me, you will better.
Thank you guys for your comment. Honestly, that was pretty insightful. I faced imposter syndrome too, I still do today. So this was definitely very inspiration for me. So we're gonna go into our next section, networking. I'm just gonna start off big with this one too. So anyone can go ahead and answer a comment on this. So I'm talking from trivial to like life and death situation, right? How important is networking, not just in the AI group, but just in general when you just, are trying to really build your career up?
I'll go ahead. Yeah. I'd say it's important. It's important to a big degree. I wouldn't say it replaces having a solid skill set, right? Because even if you know a lot of people, you still have to go through interviews, you still have to do the work. But it can make the difference between your resume going undiscovered and someone picking up your resume because you got a referral, right? Or because you know someone who knows this person at the company, right? So what I'll say about networking is join a club, go to events, meet the professionals who come out to the events and speak, go to career fairs, and try to, even get a LinkedIn. I'd say that's definitely mandatory for college, and just shoot people connections. Say, hey, I'm interested in the company you work for. I'd like to know more. And a lot of people will be flattered to chat with you, especially if you start the message by talking about them and what you admire about their role, right? That's actually from a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? You start a letter or a message with something about the person you're addressing it to, right? And then you go into what you want from them. So definitely, don't be afraid to reach out to professionals, right? And get in touch with them, because if they know you, if they've talked to you, they have a face to go along with that resume, right? And it makes it a lot easier to get your foot in the door.
I think Mo slightly hinted that y'all should network with one of us at the end, so just saying.
Yeah, well, I got my internship through networking, so I give it an A+. You guys should not only join a club, here's my thing, right? I'm gonna say this in the most pointed way possible. Networking sometimes can be kind of slimy these days because it feels like everyone is trying to get something out of everyone. So it's like, I think take a natural approach to it. Like, be interested in what other people want, ask questions, have a learning and a growth mindset, because that's how you connect with people. If you're just using them for like a connection or just, hey, so you can get my resume through the door, that's fine. There's, a time and place for that, but make the effort to go out to meetings, or if you're in a professional setting, make the effort to go and meet your coworkers and talk to them, because a lot of the times they have some really interesting things going on outside of their work life. Even like, for example, us, there's a lot of different things that we can probably connect on, but so soften it a little bit. Like, look for what's exciting to you and how that matches up with other people. And if you guys can move forward together, that's always great. But if not, then at least you know someone interesting that if you ever need to call or you ever need to, have some support for in the journey of getting a job or an internship, you can always reach out, but make it more human. You know what I'm saying? Don't just use people for connections and things like that. Because sometimes I feel like that's what it's come to sometimes these days. So get a LinkedIn, join AIS. We're still living the dream over here, even after COVID and everything. So get involved on campus. And the last thing I will say is UT Dallas has a lot of gem speakers that are so undiscovered, and you guys going out to maybe more obscure events that might take your Friday evening, it's worth it. So find what interests you, find how that aligns with other people, and just get to talking. That's it.
As usual, you're right on. I'm so happy that you found an opportunity through Dallas AI. So let me tell you a little bit about, maybe around 2017, a friend and I were just, talking about all the stuff that's happening in AI. And we were saying that, we don't know any other people in Dallas who are doing these things. And it really sucks. Because we were saying that if we were in the East Coast or West Coast, there would be so many opportunities to meet interesting people and to see what they're doing. So we decided, okay, we're gonna start something. So we started a meetup on meetup.com. We just called it Dallas AI, and we just, without doing any advertisement, we just organized our first event. And we got a lot of people interested just by putting that event. And then based on that, we met so many interesting people, so many interesting companies, and that has really helped a lot of people as well as our learning. Because every time there's a new speaker, they can talk about their experience, we learn something. Just this week, we had the head of machine learning at Capital One talk about all the initiatives they're doing. So there were a lot of interesting things there. And one of the things he mentioned was that they are just started a new job category called machine learning engineer. So you may be surprised because it sounds as no big deal, but as a company that has been around for a long time, they're just stuck in old ways. So 10, 15 years ago, they had data science category, and after that, they stopped. So everyone was in that category, but now they've changed because there's so much competition. So I think networking is really, really important. Because it's very hard to read a resume and figure out who you are. I read so many resumes, so many profiles. Some people exaggerate, some people just, are very understated. So it's very, very hard. So by talking with people, by actually understanding what are their motivations, it's much better. And as Noreen said, all of you should be on LinkedIn, and you should be doing a mix of virtual and in-person. Of course, these days it's hard to do in person, but if you can, take advantage of that, but virtual is fine. And she has really good suggestions of how to gradually build these kind of relationships. And there's always, people are always looking for students to talk about what they're learning. So it's a very good opportunity to network by introducing what you're doing, what your interests are. Just do a little bit of homework before reaching out to people, because I get a lot of generic LinkedIn messaging and requests, and it's overwhelming because I can't go through all of them. So if you want to stand out, just do a little bit of your research and connect with something interesting. And you don't always have to talk about that person, but you should always have something to say or something that shows that you've done your homework. That's cool.
I think you guys covered it. I just want to put it in 3 points. The first one is I'm an introvert. I don't like talking a lot. But what I've realized is even if you have an idea and you want to take an idea to market, just build it. You need to network. Without networking, it's not possible to even start a company of your own. So 3 areas. First, what I would suggest targeted networking. Just don't go everywhere. Understand what you want to do, especially if you are searching for a job. What's the area that you want to search for a job on? What is the type of the companies you want to work in? It's not wrong to dream big and target the networking group you want to go ahead and start socializing with. So targeted networking. The second one is segment your employers. So if you're interested to be an ML developer,
Something right? Is that one of y'all?
So
This thing's off, man.
It's reminding you to bring up the third one.
yeah, it's reminding me to go back home. So segment your employer. It's not understand the area that you want to work in, and then start profiling your employers. Do that when you're ready. You will reach there. And then lastly, with regards to the networking, yes, it's good to attend events. It's good to be a part of several discussions. It's good to build your LinkedIn profiles, etc., and all that. But build it right. I've seen a lot of LinkedIn profiles, especially calling. I mean, when you call yourself as a data scientist now. If I take an interview and someone calls himself a data scientist, I expect the person to be giving me a solution to how they can probably do a hyper tuning of my model. I don't want to tell them how to create probably a classification model using scikit-learn or using TensorFlow. I'm not interested. I'm interested in someone who is going to tell me how do I do hyper tuning. I'll give them a model and I'll ask them to increase my R squared probably from 0.95 to 0.97. That's what I'll be looking at if someone calls himself a data scientist. So be very particular in how you position your LinkedIn profile.
All right, thanks for all the panelists commenting on that. I think it's a really, really big, thing that y'all should do, and even for me, really big when I was trying to go for internships as well. So our next one is going to be the application. So you've done the job searching, you've networked with some people, you've found some very meaningful connections. Now you're like, hey, maybe you've got a referral from your network too. Now you're going on the application part, right? Obviously you're just filling out. It's really time consuming. So name, last name, all this, right? But one of the most important things they do submit in an application is potentially your resume, right? That's like your one page of who I am, right? And what can I do for you, right? So I guess geared towards the AI/ML job positions, what do you think is like one or more of the most important things to must have on your resume?
I'd say the most important thing if you're looking for, AI ML positions, especially if you're, just starting out in college, is some kind of practical experience, right? And you might be saying, oh, I haven't had a single internship. Where do I get practical experience from? That's where projects come into play, right? So if you have a GitHub with like some, AI ML projects you've done by yourself, or maybe you've done like a Kaggle competition, right? And you put the code, you open source the code, right? Or you started like a Medium blog or something about data science. Things like that will give you, they serve as practical experience, right? Because a lot of these companies, they're interested in what kind of work you can do for them, what kind of value you can add, right? So that's how you can showcase what your skills are and what kind of value you can add. Because it's better, I'll say this for a lot of you who really probably put grades like really high up there in the job application process. I'll say grades aren't the most important thing on your resume, right? I'd say the most important thing is having some kind of value, right? And it's better to be, I'd say, a student with like a 3.4 GPA who has like tons of experience and projects and work they did on the side than to be like a 4.0 student with no practical experience, right? So definitely, focus on getting those projects, getting that experience. Even if you do like research in a lab, that's also experience. Or even if you do like your own projects for AIS or for Kaggle or anything, just focus on getting some projects in your resume and then be able to explain them to the recruiter or the hiring manager, right? Because that showcases your communication skills as well. So yeah, for me, that's the one thing, projects. Definitely focus on that.
I'm gonna completely second that. I'm not gonna say no one cares about your grades, but I will say it very, very nicely. It is not the most important thing. So while you're in school, maximize the time that you have here. I unfortunately did not realize this until like last year, so don't worry, it's never too late. There's a big data management and analytics class here that's offered if you're a CS student, or I don't know, any student can probably take it. So if you're interested in something like data engineering, big data, whatever it is, take those classes if you don't want to do a side project just by yourself, because you will be forced to do a project to pass the class, and that will be something you can put on your resume. When it comes to Kaggle competition, side projects, I think a lot of things that we see is like someone will implement a Kaggle, a super basic like Kaggle competition thing, but it's very obvious they copied and pasted what someone else did and then said, oh, I put this model together and can't explain any part of it. If you're gonna put something on your resume, you better be able to back it up. Absolutely. If someone asks you, why did you include this line of code? Why did you choose these parameters? Why did you anything? You need to be able to back it up. If that means your resume is less than 1 page, so be it. Just be able to speak to your experience, be able to communicate what you do, because in like the real world, you're not always going to be speaking to other data scientists or other machine learning engineers and things like that. You'll be speaking to stakeholders sometimes on the business side that have no clue what you're doing, and you really have to like simplify it or speak at a higher level or a really low level to someone else that might be a data scientist too. So a lot of the recruiters, right, they'll like set you up with an initial phone screen, just make sure you're like real, you said everything on your resume, whatever. And then a technical screening, like, just be able to back up what's on your resume, put some side projects on there. If you have no side projects, but you took an intro to ML class here, also offered here, then put that there. Other than that, try and match whatever's in the job description if you have any of those relevant skills. So if it says Python and you've worked with Python before, just put familiar with Python. And then maybe a project that you've done that's used Python or something like that. So.
Due to some time constraints, I think we're going to try to like move on with all the other sections, but we're going to go with interviews. So you did the application, yay, the company likes your application, your resume, and everything. Now they gave you an interview, and you're like, oh no, now I'm going to prepare for this. So there's two parts, right? There's the behavioral usually and the technical. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass it to Babar. So what's different about the AI job interviews in terms of behavioral and technical versus like a regular, software development where they have like lead code and all the usual stuff? And like what kind of topics do they present in those interviews?
So there's usually two types of interviews. One is just, some technical folks just go through a list of questions one by one. And just, I hate those ones, right? But they're not really testing much. The other type of interviews are more like case studies, where they're giving you a problem and they're asking you questions about it. They want to know how you think. And that's what's more challenging, right? In real world, eventually you're going to get to a point where you're not too stressed about the job. It's more about, I want to do something more interesting. And that's where what Noreen said about communication becomes really important. A lot of time people will come to me and say, here's our problem. Can we do something with machine learning? And that's the most important question. Machine learning or AI is not going to work for everything. It's not magic. It has some prerequisites. So you have to ask them the right questions. So as part of the interview, I would say that be ready to ask them questions about what they are doing, why they're doing it, why it's important, what are their challenges, what are they looking for? Because at the end of the day, technology is one part of the big puzzle. The more important thing is, why does it matter? And how will it impact the overall business or the organization? And those are much harder because there's so much uncertainty. Whenever you have data as a major ingredient, it's subject to change. And there are a lot of nuances that you can miss. Again, in your coursework, you will get a nice clean data set and you will start from there and you will not be questioning of how did I get this? But in the real world, it's the opposite. Getting to the data set takes so much work and sometimes the project even fails because you couldn't get the data. The rest of the part is easy unless you are in one of the leading organizations which are doing cutting edge research and they want a new kind of model. Most of the other people are just using one of the previously well-tested, well-experimented models, so it's not a huge problem for them. Operationally, yes, there are a lot of challenges still out there, but that's not something you have to worry about in this team. So mostly work on your storytelling communication.
I think you covered a very important point. So when you keep your resume set, diving outside. So if you're applying for an internship or a job to, let's say, a product tech company, right? The content of your resume should be, according to them. Let's say you're applying to a financial services company. You should be talking about what you have done, from the company perspective, right? That you can connect with them. So I'll just give you a few examples here. So financial services company, let's say a person X is going to take your interview. Step one, go and look up their LinkedIn profile, right? LinkedIn profile very clearly says what is their role, what is the work that they are doing, right? Try to connect with them. Step two, from the LinkedIn profile, once you know what is the area that they're working on, etc., and all that, read up on that. Let's say a financial services company, the person is working in the call center operations space. He's a vice president or senior vice president. Read up on what is call center operations. Understand what is the technology at play over there. Probably Genesis. All right. In your resume, highlight certain things about how you have worked on any projects similar to that area. And when you talk to that person, you bring that out. That's how you establish a connect. Right? Next, always be very careful not to sell technology when you're interviewing with a non-tech company. It's very important. If you keep talking about, hey, I'm here to create a new age transfer learning model. I'm going to implement reinforcement learning for you. For what? They are out there to run a business. So connect with them in the area that they feel they can get a value out of you. In short, showcase your value.
I really love how you all both talked about, the preparation. Hey, clap. I love it how both Bubba and Cindy talked about, the preparation behind it in terms of researching the company and the person you're interviewing, as well as the practicality use of, difference between what you're experiencing in class with like an intro to ML versus what they give you at the interview, right? So those are really important factors to consider. We're gonna go next, and this is a very, very short, process. So interviews, yay, and you get the offer and you're jumping up and down. Oh my God, I got an offer from companies. This is like the best day of my life, right? And then, maybe you got one offer and you're jumping down. Maybe you got a second offer and you're really, really happy. Maybe a third one if you were, really, really super. So when you come to these offers, sometimes there is a phase where you can actually negotiate in terms of salary. And so I really want to ask the panel's opinion, should you always negotiate your offer? And if so, what are the conditions for that negotiation in terms of salary?
Just want to start over here?
Yeah, you guys can start.
Let's start on the other side.
Okay.
Yeah, do negotiate, otherwise you're going to feel bad.
Yeah, you'll always
Yeah.
regret it.
So start, do your analysis, right? Again, go up and look up, add the designation, Google it, find out, what is the salary range. Depends on the city where you are, depends on what is the type of the company you're going to work in, etc. and all that. Always have a little bit of a margin for negotiation. Of course, when you ask for a 10K more, maybe they'll be ready to give you 5K more, right? So nutshell, definitely negotiate. There's nothing wrong in that. But be very prudent in your negotiation and be prepared when you negotiate. And don't come across as a person who is just negotiating because he has got more than one job offer.
Yeah, I assume that here you're talking about negotiation for money, right?
Correct.
But in reality, you can negotiate for a lot of different things. Flexibility or special situation. But I think if you have multiple offers, the most important thing is what would be a good fit for you. Because the culture of a company, for me, it's the most important thing. You can earn more money, but every day sucks, then it's not gonna last long. So, if you're mission oriented, if you have a certain thing in mind that you want to do, I think, that's even more important. And since the market is so good, I think that you will most likely get multiple offers. So the hard part is that when you're interviewing, you are showing your best self, and the companies are telling all the great things about themselves. No company will tell you that, we have this internal politics and we have the scandals and, we have these lawsuits going on. So, nobody kind of talks about that. So even if you did your research, there are a lot of skeletons that you only find out once you're inside. By that time, it's too late. So what's the solution? We gave you the answer early on. I want someone to say something with N. The word, letter N. Networking, yes. So always go find someone and say, hey, you work at Google. What was all that scandals about people leaving the company because of, fairness in AI and that scandal and all that? I'm just big Google, I'm not against that. They steal all our data, they make a ton of money, that's fine. Other companies do the same thing. But you really need to, at that point, once you have an offer, you can go back and say, I want to know what is your future thoughts on, let's say, choose any controversial topic like privacy or protecting consumers or being more fair. Are you really committed to that? Can you show me how? And if they struggle answering that question, then it means that they're not really serious about that. So those are some of the things I would say. But definitely, read up on some of the negotiation techniques. There's some great books. Like there's one, I think, Ask for More, because the traditional negotiation skills don't work that much, but you want to frame it in a way where you are doing them a favor of some sort, and that's why they should pay more.
There's some really, really great advice. I liked how, talking about a game plan going into it, right? And also sometimes a little more than money, right, can be part of your core values too, right? And those are really some important factors when considering negotiating, multiple offers, even just one offer too. We're gonna try to go on to the next topic, which is kind of new hire, right? So you finally found a company that you really like and they like you back too, and now you're, starting with the company just maybe a couple weeks before, maybe it's your first week, right? So I guess Noreen or Mo, you guys kind of comment on this. When you guys started with your AI or ML position, data science position, right? What do you think of, like, looking back in retrospect, some do's and don't do's, right? For when you're starting out in those positions?
Do ask questions. So find someone in your organization that can mentor you. A lot of great companies, like I got assigned a mentor, and a lot of that was because I was an intern. But even as a new hire, sometimes they'll pair you up with a buddy so you can get to know the company and all those things. Get to know your coworkers. Don't be weird. Just, put yourself out there. Find someone that maybe you work with that might be like a little bit like a level above you or anything like that, that you can either pair work together or someone that you can go to for questions reliably. And just, I don't know, because I was a new hire and I'm going to be a new hire again in January, so maybe I'll have more insight from there. Also, if someone has any questions about offers and negotiations as a new grad, I just went through that process. I know we don't have time for it, but you can ask me after.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I'll say, when you're a new hire, especially in AI, depending on what industry you're in, domain knowledge will be really important, right? So find someone who knows about the problem you're working on, right? About the domain you're working on. If it's, let's say it's credit card data, right? You're trying to predict fraud or something, right? Find someone in your company or in your team who's worked in that space, right? And they don't necessarily have to be a data scientist or, an AI, but if they know that domain well, they can tell you how it works. You can get that information, and that'll help you actually build your models. That'll help you go through your job, right? And I worked for an oil and gas company, right, for an internship, and I knew nothing about oil and gas, right? And I knew nothing, right? So I did find someone who was an expert. He'd worked in this field for 20 years as a petroleum engineer, right? So I would go to him and ask him, what does this field mean? How are we getting this data? What's the approach to solving this problem, right? And that made the process a lot easier. So definitely find a domain expert that you can talk to.
For sure, I think that's definitely really important. Experts, mentors, anyone who has more experience than you overall definitely reach out to them. I think it's going to be really helpful when you kind of start that internship off. So that kind of sums up a recruiting process, right? So you kind of went through, the beginnings of searching for that job, and now you're in the position. So you have a generic idea of how to go through that process and what, are the goods and the bads of doing that, right? So hopefully you guys can start like nailing all your interviews and, hopefully see you guys in like top level Google position. Just kidding, maybe that's all. So now we're gonna go more of the AI perspective of things, right? Kind of with the field itself. And this by the way is like super open, so it's not like more like centric on the recruiting process and whatnot. So either Sundar or Babar, you can go ahead and comment on this. So in terms of the trend of AI, I guess this is kind of a generic question. Where do you think the industry is going towards right now, right? And how do you think, at least as a common person too, how can we prepare for that?
Okay, very open-ended. So the industry is going from the initial excitement phase to the reality phase, where there are a lot of big operational issues, a lot of initial assumptions about the impact on society are now producing negative results. So I think there's more effort on governance, like how do you manage all this so that it doesn't blow up? Or how do you avoid wasting a lot of money on things that will not really work? So essentially just managing all the different levels of risks that are associated with AI and machine learning. That's really important for companies. But on the other hand, I think the companies who have the right kind of mindset and the right kind of leadership are also seeing a lot of positive impact on their bottom line. So they're saving money, they're getting into new models. So they are investing more and they're experimenting. But I think the challenge is that there's so much going on, there's so many areas that it's a struggle for anyone to catch up. So we talked about this, that you won't know everything. So I think someone was recently talking about that, think of as a T. So you may have broad knowledge in many areas, but then you go deep in just a few. And that's good enough. Because if you think about it, there are so many cloud platforms out there. And pretty much most of AI machine learning is going in the cloud. And if you go to like just one Amazon, all they offer in the cloud, it will take forever to you just learn the names and what they do, right? So if you go for AWS certification, some of the questions are just, here's the name of the product, what does it do? And you can't remember all the product names. And then that's just Amazon, right? There's Microsoft, there's Google, there's IBM, there's Oracle. All of these things, this is too much. So eventually you have to figure out, a good area which interests you, and there, for example, natural language processing. There's still a ton of work to be done. So the good news for all of you guys is there are just so many unsolved problems that you all just have to select a few and work on that, and you will have a lot of opportunities to rise and shine.
So quite a few areas. Firstly, on the operational side of things, how many of you have heard of Google's Vertex AI or Amazon's SageMaker? Right. So autonomous is something that is here to stay. Let's look at it from two different industries. Industries that create autonomous, data local, Google, AWS, industries that create, and industries that use. The industries that create autonomy, if you want to get into those industries, you need to master your basic ML techniques, because the models that you're going to create and put it out is going to be used out of the box by the people in different other areas, financial services, retail, etc. Autonomy, one. Second one is in the area of reinforcement learning, which rewards, rewards and penalties and all that. Is going to say very, very early work as well now, but it's an area that I would put a bit on. The third one is MLOps. How many of you guys have heard of MLOps, machine learning? MLOps? No? Okay, cool. So MLOps is all about taking your models to production, monitoring it, putting some audit controls over it, putting some security mechanisms around it, tracking it, version controlling it, and ensuring that there is a clear mapping of how the model was used, by whom it was used, when it was used, what is the accuracies, metrics, etc. MLOps is the new DevOps, right? You also would hear people talk about AI ops. The best example that comes to my mind is in Splunk. Have you guys used Splunk? Okay. So AI ops, Splunk does a really great job with this. So bottom line, I look at it as the future next year is all about a lot of industries are going to start using these automations, right? So if you get into the industries that are going to use automations, understand how to use it in an ecosystem of that industry. So let me take a Google example here. BigQuery, AutoML, Google Cloud Storage, functions. You should know how all of these things play together when you plug in an AutoML model, right? So my take on this is understand where you want to land. Do you want to land in companies that creates these technologies or the companies that are going to use the technologies? Depending on that, do your study according to that, create your resumes according to that, and apply for positions according to that. But AutoML, reinforcement learning, and ops, top 3 ways. Yeah, go for it.
I was just gonna second his point. Right now, we're in tech consulting, right? So Dialecta, not speaking on behalf of them, but just my past experience these last couple months, I had no idea about machine learning ops. I had no idea about how important data engineering, data warehousing, all these things. There are so many companies that, we consult for that have research being done and they're creating these models and it's great, but they have no way to deploy them into actual production. And so if you you start honing those skills now to become more well-rounded, not only can you create the model and all that stuff, but you can actually put it behind an endpoint, or you have a familiarity with something like Amazon SageMaker, any of these platforms that they might be using as part of the ecosystem. Look into it, tighten up your data engineering skills as well. Like, how are you pulling it in? There's probably gonna be someone at the company to do that for you, but it's really useful to know. I wish I knew that before I started, because I had no idea how much it was used now in the industry, because people are starting to rely on it as the data governance gets bigger and bigger in scope, so.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to trends, I'd say I agree with all of you. All of that was good. One thing I will add is, the AI industry moves very fast. If you're looking into, the latest research, latest algorithms, and it's completely impractical to stay up to date with every single thing that's going on, right? So it's good to have your foundation, right? Your machine learning foundation, and then pick an area, right? If you want to specialize in NLP, right? Study deep in NLP. If you want to specialize in computer vision, go deep into that area. If you want to, go more into practical ML, right? And the model deployment process, go into that, right? But pick an area and don't try to, spread yourself really wide and try to learn everything at once. Just pick something to specialize in, and yeah, you'll be able to stay up to date with that.
These are some really, really great perspectives on where the general trend of the AI industry. And I kind of, you guys kind of answered where our next section was going to be, which is, skills to learn. So I guess we covered that. And by the way, I still don't know half these words these guys are talking about. So if you guys don't understand that, don't worry. Either A, watch the recording, figure out all the terms and do some of your research, right? Because we all start at one point. These guys started at one point, and it took them a while to learn, what they're, speaking about today. So really just have a starting point and go for it. So kind of cover the skills or like the basic, terms that you guys can, kind of dive into initially. So maybe just to kind of wrap it up. How do you get involved, right? What's like the first step that we can take to really just get started, right? How many of y'all are just intimidated by the word AI? Don't be shy. That should be everyone, basically. Okay, there you go. Good amount of y'all. So, when I first started too, AI was just like, oh my God, what is this field? I don't even want to even go near it, right? I'm pretty sure you all had the same feeling at one point. And so, you guys are from a really experienced standpoint. Now you have to think back when you guys were maybe intimidated by that field, right? What are some things that you did to really push yourself out there, got involved, right? Are there like, clubs, activities, events, maybe something online, resources, right? What are kind of some ways you really push yourself into the field?
Okay, so the funny part is when I joined AIS, and I only speak about AIS because it was like a huge defining moment of me doing anything related to this field. So I joined because of the faculty advisor, Professor Arnold. He was like, hey, come to this board meeting. And I was like, okay. And I came and I stuck around ever since. So the thing is, you have to be passionate about something, even if it's not related to AI. Like for me, I was just passionate about the club. Like I love the mission of, being part of a community, and gradually, you get more involved and then more people start coming and speaking and you meet the community, and it's a really great segue into finding what your interests are. So sometimes, throwing it at the wall and seeing what sticks is not always the best option, but figure out what is it, like the core principles that drive you towards something. What's gonna make you stay in this? So if you don't have that yet, figure it out. This is a time to explore, to learn. You don't get these communities outside of college. You really don't, right? And I'm about to learn that when I'm not in college. But I think my involvement here was a huge defining moment for me. Where I am now is because of this club, and that's not just a promotion for the club, but it kind of is. So, I really think everyone should find a community, whether it's this club, another club. Just make the best of what you have. Resource-wise, so much of like these crash courses, intro to machine learning, sponsored by AWS, YouTube, everything is self-teachable. There's no excuse to not know the basics at this point, right? So if you're too lazy to do that, enroll yourself in a class, because then you'll have to get the grade for the class and you'll probably learn something along the way. And if that piques your interest, keep going further in. I know we mentioned Kaggle a whole bunch of times. That's like an online forum where you can participate in competitions, find data sets, and basically have the building blocks to learn. So if no internship or practical experience, start there or start in the classroom and see where it goes.
Yeah, I think I can't emphasize the community part enough, right? So there are a lot of virtual communities that you can be part of, in addition to all the good stuff that we mentioned. But wherever you are, make sure you're communicating two-way. You always should be able to share something. If you are learning something, make sure you help out other people. That's for your own benefit, by the way. In addition to whatever help you're providing to them, you will get clarity. And by trying to explain it, and if there's no one else around you, you can't find any community, start writing. I think we mentioned GitHub. So start, putting your code on GitHub and see what people have to say. Or start writing a blog. So I started writing a blog on LinkedIn and Medium. Those are two good sources. It doesn't matter what you're putting out there, but just regularly writing, you will get clarity and you will have something that you can go back and see how your thinking evolved. And if you write something good, you will get credit for that in your job search as well.
I have an interesting story to tell. So, the early part of my career, I used to do a lot of software consulting. So I used to travel a lot. When you travel a lot, you tend to get homesick, and especially when you study outside and you travel a lot, and work to travel, working at home. So I started getting into behavioral science, observing people, observing nature, trying to understand yourself, trying to understand nature, people, etc. and all that. For me, AI is just about understanding yourself, put in a machine format, that's it. Right? Those of you who are interested, in behavioral science, I suggest Robert Kapowski's Stanford Lectures, and start by reading this book called Behave. It helps you understand the human emotions. It helps you understand nature. It helps you connect to behavioral science. And behavioral science is the foundation for understanding why AI is AI. It's just making it artificial. And ML for me is nothing but a new age rules engine, which is one form of implementing it.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of those areas. I'd say, AI sounds intimidating when you first hear the term. Like, when I first heard what AI was, I had no idea how it worked, right? I just heard artificial intelligence, right? And at the end of the day, AI is really a model of intelligence, right? Machine learning is about learning some tasks that human beings are performing, right? And I think once the key to really losing some of that anxiety around AI is educating yourself, right? So I'd say, a good book to start out with that I read was, if you want to go into machine learning, there's a book called Python Machine Learning, right? And then there's another one called the 100-page machine learning book, right? So it's a good idea to get into like books or Udemy courses as well. There's plenty of good courses online before you enroll in a machine learning class, right? Because then you can learn on your own pace, right? And I feel like that's, personally for me, I learn best when I'm doing it because I actually want to learn, not because it's a class and I'm compelled to get a grade, right? So I'd say definitely, go on YouTube even, take some lessons on AI ML and gain some knowledge, right? If you're curious about something, if you're curious about an algorithm or any, term that you heard during this discussion, Google it and, read about it. And as you, learn what these things are, right, you'll get more curiosity and then you'll lose that, I'll say fear around AI, right? You'll realize that AI is really, it's complex, but it's not some kind of like black magic, really. At the end of the day, AI is math. It's math in one form or another, right? So.
Well, hopefully after all of that, you guys are a little less intimidated by what AI actually is, right? And so this hopefully pursue some of y'all to actually just try something new, learn maybe even a small concept too, and whatnot. But that kind of really sums up what we really wanted to talk about for the panel discussion. And so let me just tell you the score. And the winner of tonight's panel discussion is me. Just there's not competition, guys. Yeah, I hope you really guys got some really great advice from tonight's discussion. And before we go on to audience Q&A, I'm sure some of y'all might have some questions that maybe we didn't answer or you guys didn't catch on. And so if you guys are a member, right, AI's members, this is the kind of new initiative that we set. Go ahead and log in, and we have the code on the top. And so make sure you get that in. If you don't want to have your phone or you're using a laptop, aicc.org/members/attendance. That's kind of our generic link for that. So go ahead and get your attendance for this event. So the way, as you guys are doing that, the way audience Q&A is going to work. So I'm going to go and forfeit my lapel microphone. The panelists will still have their microphone. They can pass it around. And so you guys can just line up in the center one by one, and we'll go ahead and answer questions from y'all that have it. And then if virtual people, if you guys have any questions, one of us will be pulling your questions from the stream. So go ahead and also answer that on your behalf. So if everyone already got this, I'm going to go and move on to the next slide. And so you can go ahead and start like lining up one by one, just right here. And can one of the officers pull up the stream? You guys got it? Or you can come up here. So who wants to take a shot first?
Bro, please line up and ask questions, or I'm gonna line up and ask questions.
For real.
Use LinkedIn, I haven't received any invitation.
Yeah, put the names up.
This 5789. Yeah. You guys enter? It's not pulling up a touchpad or nothing. Like
Oh, your
I-
phone's just being weird. I think it's like it just worked for me. I know it should. I don't know.
No one has a burning question. Did that really cover everything? I highly doubt.
So I can ask questions then?
Okay, yeah.
How many of you want to work for a big name company versus unknown risky startups? No, which one?
Oh, the big name company.
Big name companies, okay. It's like the FANGs, like Facebook, Apple, Amazon, those. So I didn't get like a good idea of how many want to go for a big name. Like the Facebook, Apples, all those.
I have no idea what it was.
So looks like most people want to go for startups. How much do you know about the startup activity in Dallas? Or are you thinking of leaving Dallas after you graduate and going to California? See, there's a big trend going on. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do is to increase the knowledge about AI and startup activity in Dallas. So I want to, connect students with new kinds of opportunities. So feel free to contact me if you're interested.
He's the reason I got an internship in the first place, so you guys really should, connect with him and all that. My question is, why do you guys want to work for these big, because like everyone wants to work, right? Like the money's great, all that jazz, but why? Like, are you looking for cutting edge model solutions? Like, I just want to hear like, what's up? Like, I mean, my thing, I guess my perspective on that, it just depends on what you want, right? But not everything that glitters is gold, and maybe that's because I work at a medium slight startup, but I will say like, you guys really should ask yourselves that while you're applying and while you're doing these things, because, right, a lot of us go into this for the money, or we go into this because it's like the trendy buzzword and all that stuff, but have a purpose beyond that. You can find great work and really interesting things to do at some of these smaller places, or even in different industries like consulting, et cetera, if you don't want to just go into like centered around product management, so, or not product management, product development, so. Does anyone want to volunteer why they want to work at a big company? Anyone? Yeah, what's up?
So it's two main reasons actually. The one is obviously the job security. I mean, with a startup, it could just implode immediately, and then you're kind of left picking up the dust. Like, so that's obviously a big risk with that. And the other is that you're working with world-class people, because Google, for example, is extraordinarily selective for who they choose. They choose one and out of several hundred people who would apply for any given position. And so that when you get there, you're the cream of the crop, and you're interacting with other people who are equally intelligent in what you're working with. And you could even meet people who are like maybe adjacent to what you're doing, and they're presumably also the cream of the crop in what they're doing, and you could learn from that and become a more well-rounded programmer, or whatever the case is. And so that opportunity is very nice. And then obviously it comes with like the paycheck and the splendor of the title, but that's an afterthought. The main thing is just to garner knowledge from some of the best people in the industry.
So that's a really great reason, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Anyone else want to volunteer? Yeah, what's up? I think they have the mic, yeah. You can just yell also.
I was gonna actually say the opposite, like I'd rather work for startups, like while it is probably riskier and that stuff to go through. You definitely have a bigger stake in the company, there's longevity, your presence is there. Most of the time, the startup companies have the best mentorship programs, so they want to keep you. They want you to be a part of the program from beginning until they succeed. So I feel it's a more valuable experience, especially when you're trying to learn. Like these big companies, they're really just there for you to complete a job. Like if you won't do it, they'll get someone else. But if if you're in a startup company, you're there to develop the developer.
That's also a good point. Yeah. Anyone else have input? Yes. Man in the white shirt, beige shirt.
Oh, by the way, say your name before you guys.
Yeah, I want to know you guys.
Hi, my name is Yusuf. I think the only thing about startups that's appealing is you'll probably find people with a higher drive. Or I mean, like big fan companies. I feel like in a startup, maybe you'll find a lot of people who are demotivated or just a smaller company. But if you manage to find people who are just as motivated as you are, and even though it's not a big company, I think you can form like closer connections, and each person I feel contributes more to the company than in a big company. It's like in a big company, it's kind of like you're all just like ants in like a big colony. But in startups, you guys are all contributing a big portion to it, and so you learn a lot more too. I think. Like,
That's why I work for a startup for a few months or years and then go to a large company, come back to a startup. That keeps me alive.
Yeah, you guys, yeah, honestly, like, anyone familiar with the subreddit CS career questions?
Yeah.
Get off that subreddit. Like, I'm telling you, like, one of the big things is, right, like, it's always the, wow, like, if I don't get a job at a FANG company or this, not also saying bad things about FANG companies. If you get there, congratulations, amazing, well earned, all that stuff. But like, recognize that your value is not in the job you work. It really isn't. It's the value in what you can provide to them and what you have in yourself. So if that's at a small company, a super small company, a medium-sized company, a giant company, it doesn't matter. So long as you're being fulfilled by that in the way that you need to. So like, please get off that subreddit. I've encountered like 10 people so far since I've been back in class that are like, I don't have an internship at Amazon, so I'm never gonna get hired. You're gonna get hired, okay? Like just, manage the expectations as well. And this shouldn't be something that causes so much anxiety. And I feel like that's something that isn't always addressed. It's always a go, 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 apply, and then interview and get the job. Enjoy the process also. I don't know, I feel like no one really talks about that. It's sad.
Last part is.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is hard, but you figure it out at the end.
for sure. Yeah, and I'll say something important too. Think about the culture of the company you're working for, right? Because, everyone wants to work for Google, Amazon, Facebook, Netflix, Apple, right? But ask yourself, is the culture of the company something I can see myself, being a part of long term, right? Like at Amazon, there's kind of like this Darwinian survival of the fittest culture, right? And I have a friend who works at Amazon, right? I'm not saying anything against it, Amazon, but he was like a really, really hard worker, right? Like he'd come to college at like 8 a.m., leave at like 11 p.m., just studying, nonstop, right? Hanging out and studying, right? So for him, Amazon made sense because he was okay with Amazon or work being his life, right? And working even on weekends, right? So ask yourself, what kind of culture would I do well in, right? And do I want my job, right, at Google or Facebook or Amazon or Apple to become like my whole identity, right? Because there's more to life than just your 9-to-5 job, right? Maybe someday you want to start your own company, right? And you have like a side hustle you want to develop, but there's some other area of your life that you want to invest in, right? So keep that in mind, keep work-life balance in mind, and keep culture in mind.
And if you can do that at one of these big companies, kudos to you. Again, this is not anti-big company, this is just saying like, don't put all your self-worth and value in stuff like that because it's never gonna end up good for you. It really doesn't, so. Of course.
Thank you, Mike. There's this concept called as cohorts. You guys know what a cohort concept, right? So you become what you're a part of. So you're in a crowd of do-getters. You become a part of it, right? You become that. So one point I would like to stress is know your exit strategy from a cohort. If the cohort is becoming toxic, you need to exit out. Second, I think I saw a lot of you guys say you want to be a part of a startup or create startup yourself, right? Have you guys thought about how you want to protect your ideas? Anyone? Right.
I've always heard that general concept. I've always heard the general concept is you never share an idea with a company that you don't want to give up. And that's a pretty sound argument. So yeah, if you're going to start, you have to be careful about what what your own proprietary knowledge is, how it's used.
Good point. Few things you need to be careful of. All of you are going to take interviews, right? Small company, big company, doesn't matter. You're going to take interviews, right? Whatever the small idea you have, think about it before you share it with your interviewer. I don't want to take names, but there has been many ideas which has been stolen from the interviews. And ideas have become successful products.
Talk about Salesforce.
Next, you're in a company and you have an idea. Your company has got an idea, but your company might not, because it's a startup or youngsters. You guys might not know how to protect an idea. Ensure you create an idea around it. The first thing is to have a patent. How many of you watch Shark Tank? What is the first thing they ask you there? Do you have a design patent? Do you have a process patent? Right? So when you're working in a startup or you are creating a startup, better protect it. If you don't want to protect it, that's fine, make it an open source. But don't expect that you're going to sell something which is not protected by law. So two things, cohort. You have to understand when you need to exit out of a cohort. Big company, small company, doesn't matter. Second, if you're working in startups or you want to create a startup, you want to make money out of it, you need to protect your idea through IP.
So we're kind of running low on time. We have a minute left. So does anyone have any last burning question? Oh, no, okay, we got one volunteer. Let's go.
Make sure to say your name before, so you know.
Hi, I'm Faisal. So I'm an international graduate student, and I get that this thing is mostly for undergraduates, so I'm already feeling like an imposter here. So I landed here about 2 months ago, and I'm already in circles with students, like in my courses and all. They're already so sure of what they want, like they have an in at a company because of their uncle, and so many things. But it's like they're taking extra credits, they're taking 4 courses instead of 3 courses. Like, what do I like? It's a bit overwhelming for me, especially because I'm trying. I'm like, this is my 10th event or something that I'm attending. I'm trying to attend all events. I'm trying to be on Discord, watch out for announcements, and try to see what people are doing, try to connect with people. So I don't know, I'm just rambling at this point, but what I want to know is, what do you do when you're new here, and when you have to, I don't know, how do you make the right connections? How do you know what to do? And I mean, there have been many people who have done this. I mean, new people coming here, doing their graduate degrees, getting a job, and everything. So, sort of just getting back to it. It's basically, my question is mainly to Barbara and.
So just very interesting question, but think about the current CEOs of Google, Microsoft, IBM. They were all students, came here without any advantage of uncles or aunties. They made it, right? So the system is pretty good. And I was a graduate student here as well. And just like you, I got overwhelmed when I came. I was at a very competitive school. So, just like you were mentioning that when you go to Google or Facebook, they're very selective. But, also think about the other side, that when you are with extra smart people, they have egos and, they want to be the best. So there's some pressure on you. Not a bad thing, but just keep that in mind. But I would say just relax, 2 months. You've already done 10 events. That's like one event
That's a
every.
lot,
Yeah, that's a lot. So you just relax, enjoy, the weather. It's gonna get nicer, and things will happen as long as you stay focused and you kind of do that. Again, networking. Now you have to do extra work for networking, and you will find people who will be happy to help you out. Definitely connect with us, and you will start discovering a lot of opportunities, and the system is very evenly played. So you should not have issues, but you have to give it time.
So I came here just like you. And I got a job. So he covered quite a lot of important points. I would like to add a few more. Firstly, you have a very important skill, which is your candid. I mean it. If you had told me this in the interview, if this is the way that you have spoken to me in the interview, I would have selected you for a very simple reason that you will tell me if your model is going to work or not. Simple. I don't want someone who tells me that, hey, Sudhir, everything is fine, and we are going for deployment over the weekend, and everything is absolutely not fine. Right? So, trust in yourself, you're candid, that will take you a long way. Second, internship is the best way to get in to any company. And you're in the right place at the right time. I had to come to this. I had to come to this because it's the right place. So you will get it. It's not difficult. You're in the right college, and it's just a matter of time. Lastly, yes, you connect with all of us. In every event, whomever you meet, you talk to. Be candid as this. Ask direct questions. Put the people on the spot and tell them that, hey, don't come and give me gyan over here. Ask me how to get a job. So be candid, ask them, get connections, and I think you'll get it.
That's all we have for time. So thanks for coming out. Can we get a big round of applause for our panelists? This was amazing. I learned so much, more than I even came to that door with, and this has been awesome. So thank you, panelists, for coming out tonight. Did y'all learn something new? Yeah? Yeah, that's what's up. So I don't know if panelists you can stay just a little bit longer, but thank you guys for coming out. If you guys want to just talk to one of the officers and talk to one of the panelists just a little bit, quick chat, feel free to do that. But other than that, this is it. We kind of ended right on time, so I guess it worked out in the end. But thank you guys for coming out. Hope you have a good night.
Thank you guys.